Thanks for tuning in to the Marvel Movie Minute.
Want to skip those pesky ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a weekly podcast where we disassemble a film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe into 5-minute segments and then examine them in obsessive and occasionally hilarious detail. I'm Kyle Olson from the Craft and Chaos podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and I'm from, the Craft and Chaos podcast. How about that?
Yeah. I think that's a good one to mention.
Yeah.
Rob and Matthew will not be joining us today as they are working on their YouTube video essays. Matthew's is entitled Padme Was Perfect, a 7-hour defense of Star Wars Space Angel, while Rob is working on Fallen Woman. Is Black Widow the Mary Magdalene of the MCU? Video editing takes a lot of time, so you just got Pete in
it really
today.
does. It really does.
So today we'll be succeeding on our insight checks as we examine minutes 16 through 20 of Captain America: The Winter Soldier from 2014, directed by the Russo brothers. We find Steve and his pal Nick standing together at the railing, gazing out into the future. It might be romantic, if not for the 3 gigantic war machines that fill their fields of view.
Yeah, so it starts softly, and it starts as you and Matthew ended last week talking about how Nick's granddad used to work in an elevator just like this, an elevator full in a building full of white people, and it was a kinder time, and it was a gentler time until cut to this minute. Oh, by the way, granddad carried a gun.
Yeah, and now we get to see Nick's gun.
Gun.
Yeah, so he's now opening his lunch bag and showing us what he's been carrying and all this time. So I know you edit the show, so you would have heard last episode. What are your thoughts about why Nick is showing this to the Cap now? Before we get into their conversation, what do you think is going through Nick's head as they're riding that elevator down and going out into here?
I think I'm some variant of where you two landed last week, which is right in the realm of, this is gonna happen. Right. And Nick's confidence that this thing is gonna happen is pretty high, though we'll find out not 100%, but pretty high. And I think there's just a bit of, I got to get this guy on my train. I've got to get Captain America on the same train that I am, or there might be additional complications. And so I think this was a way for him to open the door to something that Cap cannot, according to sort of Nick's Cap canon, cannot, get in the way of, right? He can't impede. And I think this is a way to try and get him on his side.
Yeah. It's interesting sort of the tact he takes too, where he tries to sort of take that thing of like, hey, you were a war guy. We could have stopped the war if we'd have had these then.
Yeah.
Like, what? Right. Right.
Wouldn't that have been nice, buddy?
Just imagine if you didn't have to go over. But before we even get into the conversation, first we have about a minute of what I would describe as military porn. I mean, they really take, I think of the first minute, they're about 45 seconds. It's just like, whoa, look at these guns. Look at these engines. Look, I mean, it really is. And big patriotic music. I mean, it's very bombastic of like, look at how cool these things are. Like, I guess we're supposed to be in sort of Nick's head at that point of like, whoa, American militarism on display, right? Here we go.
But you know what? Wait a minute. Like, that paints Nick as an uber patriot. And that's one of the things that I have always struggled with a little bit in the MCU adaptation of Nick Fury, which is he's an uber spy, right? He is an uber expert in espionage and secrets, and his bombast, his patriotism has never really been fully on display. To my eye, this is the first time we've seen Nick stand up loud and proud and say, look at our military machine. Right? I mean, doesn't that strike you as a bit of a new turn for Nick?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially something so overt.
Yeah.
Like even if we go by what we've known before and what's coming afterwards, like this is I hate to talk about it, but post Secret Invasion and post the events of before Secret Invasion and Captain Marvel. So we know Nick knows a lot more than there's just Chitauri out there.
Yeah.
He's aware of all these things, but everything he's done has been clandestine. Like he's the spy master, like you're saying. And now to have it be like, and now we're going to roll out 3 gigantic war machines that are going to kill people from orbit. Yes. It does seem a little bit like, is this a Nick plan, or is he having to go along with this? Yeah, the first time as I watched these minutes, now I was sort of examining them, I was kind of like, yeah, something about this doesn't really seem very Nick Fury.
Like, using your words, take everything we know about Nick and what comes after and what came before. Does it even seem like he should be in charge of this project?
Right.
Right.
I mean, maybe gathering the intel on who the targets are, but not the idea of like rolling out these death dealers.
Yes. Yeah. Now, on the death dealers themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty cool.
They are pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I've always loved the Helicarrier, like as a concept, even just from the ridiculous Nick Fury 70s thing of like this gigantic aircraft carrier, flying through the sky,
which was so dumb. The original Helicarrier was so dumb.
Ridiculous. but it's in the era, like this is all 70s stuff. Like it was a pretty wild time in Marvel. As we see, as they're showing the guns and everything too, then we fly over the deck, we see all the Quinjets. I know you guys talked a lot about Quinjets in Avengers.
We absolutely did. And I guess we all talked about Quinjet, the Quinjet in the opening shot of this. But that is my favorite. I have a weird, I don't know, maybe it's a fetish, maybe it's an action movie fetish of watching things, put flying things on top of other flying things. Right?
Can you give me like 2 more examples?
No, I can't. This is the one. This is all it is, and it became a fetish. I love that shot. It's like a 2.5 second shot of a Quinjet on a crane being loaded on top of the Helicarrier, and I am here for it. I don't know why. I love it. It's like ASMR. For some people, it scratches something in my brain. I'm like, oh God, flying things on other flying things. Amazing.
Yeah, I did get a little bit of like Independence Day vibes. Yeah. That's sort of like, seeing all of these flying machines together. Just a little bit of the Quinjet. The Quinjet first appearance was in Avengers 61 from December of 1968. It was interesting. The Avengers lineup was kind of unique at that point. Do you have any idea who the Avengers were? In 1968, like who, like the people just specifically on the mission where the Quinjet first showed up?
I could just start guessing random 60s Avengers, and I think I'd probably land somewhere in the ballpark.
You probably would, yeah. So in that issue, the Avengers were Hawkeye, Vision, Black Panther, Black Knight, and Doctor Strange.
Okay, I think I could have gotten 4 out of 5.
They talk about other ones, but like those, Black Knight, the ones that like who may or may not be in the MCU. I mean, kind of goes by how the reception from Eternals, like they kind of teased him, but then will Kit Harington ever get to wield the Black Blade? We don't know.
Arguably the best part of the Eternals was the post-credit scene.
Yeah. Where you hear the voice of Blade.
Yeah.
And here it is years later, still waiting for him to show up.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So that's the Quinjet. That's the era of Avengers. The Quinjet has become, do we know why is the Quinjet named the Quinjet?
I think because it can move in 5 or like different directions.
Okay.
Like, does that, but I'm not actually sure what the thing is. So when we get to the conversation, then we find out what the mission of the Lumerian Star was, which is to launch the satellites that will form the backbone of Project Insight. So they are the things that will be doing the intel gathering of the targets for these guys who are the ones who are the weapons. So those are the scopes, I guess. That was what was on Lumerian Star. Like why Batroc people wanted it, we still don't really know that. But we know that's what their top secret mission was, and that it had succeeded.
Right. Well, especially because everybody is Hydra at this point, right? Yes. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. is Hydra. Why is Hydra stealing plans from Hydra with Hydra?
Right.
We're
Yeah,
not gonna. I mean, we're not gonna probe that because it's Hydra all the way down.
Right. Just if you chop off one head, Pete.
Right. Right. So many heads.
They do a little bit of discussion on the thing too, as the Quinjets. They talk about the repulsor engines, and
Yes.
he says, like, oh, they don't have to land, they don't have to refuel the repulsor, and Captain America just says, Stark.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Nick says, oh yeah, he got a close look at them and had some design modifications, and of course that's referring to the fact when he got caught in one of the engines in the Avengers, and bounced around like a pinball.
Yeah, he had some ideas. It does imply, or does it imply to you, that Stark was actually involved in the construction of these helicarriers? Do you think he was compartmentalized out in some way, or that he was in on the secret?
Oh, I don't know. I think, I guess, as what I think of right now, knowing of his, build a suit of armor around the world idea that is coming down the line here pretty soon, it seems that he would not have a problem being a military contractor again in terms of getting engines for it. I don't know that he knew they were going to be used for Project Insight. I think he probably just thought he was improving on the design for the next helicarrier.
Yes.
After the last one, didn't make it out intact. This, it might have been him not knowing that this part of it. So I don't think those are like Stark guns.
That was my next question. Like, do you think the rest of this equipment is Stark?
No, I don't. I mean, headcanon wise, I don't. I assume that Nick, being Nick, probably got a bunch of contractors to work on individual pieces. They didn't know what they were doing. Only him and probably Alexander Pierce, and of course some other people knew what they were really being used for.
Yeah.
Like only he saw the full blueprints. They just saw the individual pieces. It's the hiring blind men to make an elephant. No, I think I took that metaphor too far.
Yes, no, that broke in your capable hands. I think it does beg the question of, we often talk about, well, when there is a globe threatening catastrophe imminent, why is there only one superhero available? Well, the same thing goes for this. When there is globe-threatening investment in infrastructure, everything we know about Stark is that they're involved in every part of it. Yeah. So, is it that Nick wouldn't trust Tony? Is it, to my mind, it gives even greater reason for Steve and Tony to further develop their rift. But, this is all me armchairing. They don't ever really talk about it.
No, but you can see it kind of starting here. Yeah. And, we know that from what we've seen from Iron Man 2 and 3, like Stark Industries is no longer making weapons, but engines aren't weapons.
Engines aren't weapons.
And is the Quinjet, that's never really been figured out. Is that a Stark design? Yeah. Like, is that his too? And were they making those? Because they're just jets, right? I mean, they have giant chain guns on the bottom of them that could shoot a god, but they're just for birds to make sure
very
that's
versatile.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly.
Very versatile. Those guns, I mean, that is another thing that you just sort of have to wrap your head around during the pageantry porn. Because as they do that pull away from the guns, it's absurd, the number of guns and the size of the guns. It is absurd. Yeah. It feels like something much more out of maybe Asgardian design. Like a lot of the lines come from Asgardian designs, and something that Taika Waititi definitely took as influence for a lot of the weapons that end up being used, the ray weapons. And it does make me wonder where those designs come from in this massive bit of shield infrastructure. It's new.
Yeah. And especially because, just from my little things about, I don't know much about guns and war and things, but I've read a lot of sci-fi. So I'm assuming that because they're up high, these are sort of like rail guns, that they're just like, but they're giant guns, and the whole thing is like, we can eliminate 1,000 targets an hour. But when you see later on, it's individuals. So what are they firing from almost orbit that can hit one person? I mean,
frozen
at a bunch, they're not. Essentially, yeah. But the question is then, why do you need a thing that's like a barrel that's 20 feet long to shoot a pea out of something? I mean,
that's what it feels like.
At escape velocity, like a ball bearing would do a lot of damage. It's the whole, like, what,
just
penny off the top of the Empire State Building. Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Over engineering. You can never really over engineer, is what I've heard.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're going to go big, go big.
Yes.
Like big guns.
Well, they do make a statement, right? This is also a narrative statement, and it sort of has to be this big in order for Cap to have the reaction that he does over the course of the next act.
Yeah. Yeah, because essentially Nick lays out his plan and says, like, we're going to put these in orbit. We're going to pick the individual targets. We're going to wipe them all out. They'll never even know it's coming. It's going to be, this massive, massive plan. And this, all of a sudden, I don't know what reaction he thought he'd get from Steve, but it's not favorable. Like I think a couple lines I wrote down. Steve says, "I thought the punishment came after the crime." And Nick says, "We can't afford to wait that long." And it was like, ooh.
I mean, Nick really pretty much should have just said, "Did you see Minority Report? It was a great movie, and that'll get you up to speed." And it didn't. It didn't end well. He said, "Pretty much stop after about 30 minutes. You'll get it."
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he saw the trailer and he's like, "That's it, guys."
That's it. Add that to your list.
Next morning,
get out your little book.
Cancel everything else. This is what we're working on now.
This gives us our first real ideological break between Steve and Nick. We've had little breaks, but those little breaks that we've had between Steve and Nick usually seem to stem from man out of time stuff.
Yeah.
This we get. This is, Steve's caught up. He's caught up enough to know right from wrong and to remember right from wrong. And Nick is executing in the wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's in Avengers. His whole thing was he didn't want to come back to the fight. Like he did his war. He did his time, lost everything. The whole all the guys in my barbershop quartet are dead. Like that was a joke from earlier in this movie. It's a joke, but also, they are. So then having joined the Avengers and having Nick sort of running the show, he's like, "Oh, I found my place again." And now he's in a very different place and has to do things, that probably aren't, quite as stars and stripesy as he was hoping. But they do go back and Nick tries to sort of turn this around, being like, "Hey, you were in a war," and he mentions the stuff you did in the SSR. So the SSR is the Strategic Scientific Reserve. It is according to the wiki, is a top secret Allied intelligence agency during World War II, formed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This is also where Project Rebirth comes in. That was under SSR. That's Agent Carter's, which we're going to talk about towards the end. That was all under SSR, and somewhere along the line, it became SHIELD or sort of moved into SHIELD. We'll see a little of that later on in this movie, but there's that whole era is sort of a little bit gray.
Yes, mostly because Agent Carter was canceled too soon.
Yeah, far too soon.
Yeah, that's where it comes
in
pretty heavily. Was Project Insight part of a program in the comics? Part of a Winter Soldier run or a 60s run? Did anybody? This was all MCU, right?
No, as far as I know, I mean, and get in the comments if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, this is a complete movie plan.
Okay,
like this is all something that Marcus and McFeely came up with as to have a thing. There was not. I mean, Red Skull has had 100. It was so there's possible there's something similar, but nothing on this scale. That they would have that big of that much. Into the government, where like the government is literally funding its own destruction, essentially, even though they don't know it.
Yeah, it first it demonstrates, I think, to me just how well at the time Marvel leadership was able to, or MCU leadership was able to adapt to a story that feels comic resonant and also timeless and also current, right? All of those things, I think, play very well. So that's our quiz. Anything else on the actual Helicarriers that we want to drool over?
We'll be seeing them again, so whatever we don't get here, we'll get there. They also, this is like you're saying, this is setting the stakes. So all here is here is the new problem. Here's now Steve has to contend with this. Like, is he on board with this or not? And so like, and then you get one of his best lines of this, I think they use it in every trailer, which is, this isn't freedom, this is fear.
Yeah.
So holding a gun to the world's head. I mean, yeah, this is like, ooh, Marcus and McFeely. Yeah. Like the guys, man. Ooh, they get into it. Like, it kind of can't, it sort of blows my mind sometimes of when you think of sort of the later, some of the other Marvel stuff that like, they were really allowed to like dig in here in a way that we really haven't seen before, like to really get into the dirt. I mean, like obviously you could black bag this, you could go much farther stuff too, but considering the fact that this is a superhero movie about a guy who wears the American flag.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're poking a
stuff.
lot of holes, holes. And ending on, or beginning this sequence as he turns around, that reveal, that mine's a little bit bigger than a 22 though.
Yeah.
What a stellar line.
Yeah. And the two of them acting the hell out of it too. Like, central conflict set up right here, minute 17. And like, we now know the stakes and what's happening. And then we sort of in Cap's head as he leaves. So as minute 18 starts, then he's riding out on his Harley Davidson Softail breakout. Even the people at the internet, automobile database couldn't exactly figure out which specific model that was, but that's as close as it got.
Well, so these 5 minutes, I feel like you and I were gifted with the real sweet and the salt. Like we have the great Project Insight reveal. Yeah. And then we go down, memory lane.
Yeah. I don't think it's one at all. Really? I think because I think it works. We'll talk in the specifics again, but I think it works because we now know Cap has to contend with the future. So now he's been shown this is happening. Like he's just one guy. Like, here's what's going to happen. Like, you've been running around and punching spies and fighting Batroc, but all that's over. Now we're gonna nuke people from orbit. We're gonna we're gonna send shells down and just wipe them out, and you won't even have to get your hands dirty. And we'll do it without trials, without just because we say they get to disappear.
Yeah.
And now he has to contend with the fact that this is the future. So what does he do? He goes to the past.
So you think his visit to the museum is a salve for his bruised nerve of the future sense?
Because he's going back to sort of what is familiar to him. Like he's going back, and he really can't go see old friends. So the closest he can get is watching pictures and videos.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to it. There's some real nice like foreshadowing stuff that they put into this that I never noticed until you sort of start digging into it. I didn't realize how important this part was to reminding people and setting up stuff for the future.
Well, it certainly is, for sure. I don't dispute that. But I do think narratively it throws the brakes on the pacing of the film right here, because I don't think most people watching the movie are aware of all of the little diamonds of foreshadowing that are in these couple of minutes.
I suppose, but I think you kind of have to take your medicine a little bit.
Yes,
because this is the price of like being part of a franchise, is you can't assume everyone has seen it. So we're about to get into like, I don't know, 4 minutes of, in case you didn't watch Captain America, the first Avenger.
Yes. Okay.
This is like, you're going to need to know some of this stuff to make it matter.
Let me introduce you to the Howling Commandos slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So where do you want to begin?
So Cap is driving over to the Smithsonian Institute National Air and Space Museum. And we know that because there's a very handy voiceover that says, "Welcome to the Smithsonian." So I love that stuff. I love when it's subtle, like when they just show a bunch of stuff and Cap is walking and you hear just a voiceover of just like thing like, "Welcome to the Smithsonian." They don't have a big sign that says Smithsonian that they slowly pan over and show Steve. It's a nice way of doing it. And we were talking on another show about like really bad versions of like the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, where they're like, he's like, "Torpedo tube," like when they just, that they're just like, one executive's like, "I don't know what that is." Like, okay, they just have to add a really clunky line of dialogue over someone's shoulder
Yeah. Yeah, the ADR parade.
Tell you what, yeah, exactly. But I love, this is the one I really love, to be like, oh, they told us without telling us. But this isn't actually the Smithsonian. This is the Western Reserve Historical Society History Center. It is in Cleveland, like most of the stuff that we have in here. And in case you want to go, active military, get free admission.
So step right up.
So exactly. As the camera pans around over, the first thing we see is the Spirit of St. Louis. Now, this is this is a replica, but the one that would be the Smithsonian is the one that Charles Lindbergh flew across. He was the first solo nonstop transatlantic flight from Long Island, New York to Paris, France. He flew. It lasted 33 hours and 30 minutes. I thought it was interesting because I'm like, hey, and like they show that as like a piece of the past, and they cut to Cap, and I was thinking, what? I wonder, and I did the math, and I think Cap could have seen Charles Lindbergh take off.
Really?
Because, like, according to the thing, Steve Rogers was born on July 4th, of course, 1918. Charles Lindbergh flew in 1927. So Cap would have been 9
years old.
So, and it's Long Island. It's not that far from Brooklyn. So, like, you know, they could have gone over on the thing, and like he and his mom could have like watched Charles Lindbergh like take off and fly in the thing. So, I mean, they put it as just like a, hey, this is Smithsonian.
You're at the Smithsonian,
very famous plane. But, you know, it really could be a direct connection to Cap.
That's really interesting. That's one I did not expect to learn from you today.
It was as Cap goes in, we discover that there actually is a giant Captain America exhibit. It's called Captain America, the Living Legend and Symbol of Courage. There's a quote from President Matthew Ellis on there, which if you watch Iron Man 3, you've spent a lot of time. This is where I want to throw to you, because for our younger listeners, people who don't know, tell us why it's really cool that the voiceover is being done by Gary Sinise.
Well, I don't know what you're referring to, but it could be Forrest Gump. It could be what is the Easter egg you want me to pull out here?
Oh, I honestly, if I'm literally saying, like, I think a lot of people don't know who Gary Sinise is.
Really?
Or why? Yes. I think so. We have younger listeners who probably don't know and don't understand the significance, and why as soon as he started talking, we all of this generation went, oh.
Yeah, no, his voice is iconic. His voice has been used in many, I'll say, Ken Burns documentaries, right? Like, he is the slow spoken voiceover of history. And I think that is his first and greatest value in a museum exhibit. It is so natural, but he's also a major advocate for fallen soldiers. He's raised
a lot of money to help soldiers.
Boatload of money for our service members, and he has played roles that absolutely lean on exactly his ideology and tell the stories of the people that clearly are most important to him. And so I bring up Forrest Gump, but you could say the same thing about Ken Mattingly in Apollo 13. You could say the same thing about George Milton in Of Mice and Men, right? Like, trying to understand humanity, and then they give that voice, this voice that is one of searching for the soul of humanity, to Gary Sinise in a museum exhibit about Captain America. It's pretty special.
See, now you didn't even know I was going to ask you that.
No.
And then you sort of like, I don't know. And then you deliver this.
Was that what you were looking for?
That's exactly what I was looking for.
All right. I stand down. I love Gary Sinise. I'm a stan. It's okay. I'm fine.
It's also interesting to think that Gary Sinise is an actor in the MCU.
Yes.
So like, that like, it's that weird thing of like, okay, so if he's there, like, is Tom Hanks is also, like, you start going down the line, and then you sort of hit somebody who is in the, we know Star Wars exists. Like, do they know who Mace Windu is? And they say that looks like Nick Fury? I mean, yeah. Well, we don't know.
It's the same part with the purple lightsaber. I don't know.
Right, exactly. So you have to kind of, you would wonder a little bit. But as Cap is walking in, we see he's wearing the Marvel disguise. Yes, he has the trademark ball cap on, which immediately makes it so 90% of the people don't notice who it is.
Except
we have a kid wearing a Captain America shirt who instantly clocks him and sees that's what it is.
The innocence of youth.
That's right. This is Dante Rosalina. He is the nephew of the Russo brothers. So they brought him in specifically just to do that thing. And Cap does a little don't tell. Like, yes, it's me, but don't make a thing of it.
Well, did we see Dante in anything else? I didn't look up his IMDb.
No, this was it. As far as I know, I couldn't find anything else that. So I think it was just like, hey, I'm going to put my nephew to have him have this thing, and then he went on to wherever his career. So, wherever he is, I hope he is happy in his career.
Doing well.
And has a significant role here in the MCU as someone who is the only person we see actively can see through the Marvel disguise, as will be used many times over the course of even this movie. You put the ball cap on, and suddenly you're nearly anonymous. It's the invisibility cloak.
I love it.
Of the MCU.
I love it so much.
As Captain walked by, we see a giant mural that is done by Ryan Meinerding. He is he was an illustrator on Iron Man. He became the head of visual development with Iron Man 3, and he is still the head of visual development for all of Marvel. So anything that the look of Marvel has to go through him to say is. And so he does all stuff digitally. So he had to teach himself how to make it look like he had painted it. So he created that entire image and then had to go back in and add brush strokes and
he did a great job. He did a great job. Good.
I know, it's incredible. I hope that that's a real thing somewhere, that if you go to the Marvel offices or in the basement, wherever, there
better be a mural.
It's just, right.
It's really good.
It's just Cap's head.
I do love as he's giving the kid Dante the shush sign. Right, the quote on the wall right behind him is describing, while on tour in Azzano, Italy, Rogers saved 163 lives, including that of his best friend, Sergeant James Buchanan Barnes.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Winter Soldier.
Right, exactly. I'd totally forgotten that was there. Obviously Chris Evans is magnetic, so you're watching him and doing his little thing, and then just over his shoulder, they're written on the wall, James Buchanan Barnes. It was like, oh wow, I kind of forgot that was like
minute 18.
Right,
here we are.
There it is. It'd be like, here it is. I mean, obviously he's going to spend a little more time on more later, but there it is. Like they're putting it out there as, here's a name that you're probably going to want to remember.
Yeah. Don't miss this. This is the first time, but don't worry, we'll hammer it home.
And we hear Gary Sinise talking about Captain America and his Howling Commandos. So this is, I believe, the first time that particular name is used. We saw them in First Avenger, but I couldn't find any reference to them in that movie as being the Howling Commandos.
I think they were only referred to in history as the Howling Commandos. It's not like when they're sitting in the little bar, in Italy, talking about going back in to get Red Skull. I don't think they're ever talking about it in terms of, well, we're the Howling Commandos, so we should do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't show up and Cap's like, who are you guys? Why, Cap? We're the Howling Commando. So that comes from a comic, Marvel comic, Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, #1 from March of 1964. It was originally Nick Fury's group. And this was when Nick Fury, in the original Marvel continuity, the 616 continuity, was a soldier in World War II. And he led this group. It was only later on they sort of retconned them in. Cap was with a group called the Invaders, which is a whole other thing. They sort of merged the two of them in First Avengers. And now we have them as Cap and the Howling Commandos, as opposed to, Nick, who we now know did not fight in that. He had something called the Infinity Formula, which was his own super soldier serum that kept him from aging. That's why he's still around, but didn't give him the super strength.
Right.
But now we have it sort of back in, and we have we don't need to go through all of them, but because they don't really play much more than this, but they all show up in various different ways, because we learn that the only one who died in World War II was Sergeant Bucky Barnes.
Yeah.
Or did he?
So good. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Because even we see in the Agent Carter one shot, Dum Dum Dugan did survive. Like he's the ones we know that he went on and he showed up in that thing as hanging out with Howard. You see him and Howard Stark hanging out at Howard's mansion.
Yeah.
So we know that he did survive. And like Jim Rita, we see I think it's great. His grandson is the principal at Peter Parker's high school in Homecoming. So same actor. They just the hired as well.
So the nice thing about this, the Howling Commandos reveal is this is another thing we are literally hanging a flag on, because later in the film, the importance of this display will come into focus. Yeah. And so we have to linger on it, especially Captain America's uniform of the era.
That's right. His first Avenger outfit.
Yep.
The one which it's that one that doesn't really have that much of an origin. We don't really know where that comes from, because they go right from him in kind of the on stage costume, like the USO fatigues version. Yep. And then the next time, all of a sudden, he's in like the gritty armored version of it too. So I was like, I wonder where that, like, how they decided that, like, okay, now we're into this. So no one tells Steve what to do. I don't know.
Of the MCU Steve uniforms, do you have a particular favorite?
No, I mean, no, not really, because I don't really like this one, but I don't really think we're supposed to. Like I'm sorry, I should specify. I'm looking at a picture of Captain America: The Winter Soldier that we have at the bottom of our screen of the stripes and the star. This was something that came later on when Steve had stopped being Captain America, but he was still like a guy. And it wasn't a particularly fantastic run. So I was never really a big fan of that. I understand, but I think we're supposed to dislike it here because we're supposed to dislike kind of what it represents. I guess the first Avenger one is probably the closest they've come to doing it. It's nice that when they do the proper what it looked like from the comic direct translation, like when he walks out of the USO, like that's kind of the way that Jack Kirby drew him.
Yes.
And Joe Simon and all those guys. Like that's kind of what it is. And when you see it on screen, you go, oh yeah, that doesn't really work.
It does not work. But I'm so glad they found a way to like honor the comic uniform, because so many of our screen presence superheroes get no original honor of their uniforms.
No, they don't get to be anywhere close. So,
I mean, can you imagine if they had done a comic accurate Batroc?
or Whiplash, with his green mohawk. I mean, there's so many of those guys that they did a good job of sort of steering away. So I would say. What about you? What's your favorate of?
I mean,
we can go forward and backward.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go forward, it's the dark Cap. It's the sort of, what was that? He comes back from Endgame, or it was
Infinity War, where he's
black,
where the star is gone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think I happen to like a Cap that's a little bit more stealthy.
Oh, okay. Stealthy. Interesting. So are you much more of the X-Men should be in black leather school of thinking?
Oh, 100%. The yellow is, I am so not a purist when it comes to X-Men uniforms. The gold, I'm so done. And I'm so done. I can't even.
I can't even tell if you're doing a bit. Like,
there's no bit. No, there's no bit. I feel very strongly about this. I hate the yellow so much. I've always hated it. I was like, I cannot take the X-Men seriously because of those ridiculous uniforms. So it'll be really interesting to see how that adapts in coming films. But we digress.
Yeah. But here, like you're saying, it's literally, this is Chekhov's costume. Like there it is.
Yes.
It'll come back in the third act. Like
costume ain't gonna wear itself, Kyle.
That's right. But it's a beautiful display of like all of them and their thing. I mean, I think it was interesting that they have like Cap front and center, and then they went like, did you really have? I mean, like Dum Dum Dugan's hat, sure, but like, did you really have a beret? The rest of them are just kind of army clothes. Like, I mean, it wasn't like any of them in the world were ever like custom designed armor for these guys. Like it's just literally whatever they found.
Right.
And I can't imagine that there was like a historian who like, after on VE Day or whatever was like, wait, wait, I need your hat. Like,
yeah. I just had to scroll back and look at it again because my like sense memory of that sequence, they actually had a mustache on the mannequin for Dum Dum, and I thought that would be like, do you had his mustache really? They do not. It's only in the picture. So good, dodged a bullet.
But obviously here it is, and this is not the only time Cap will be returning to the Smithsonian. Then next time we see him watching a video with a mother, or assume a mother and her child, and we hear a familiar voice, and it's Haley Atwell reprising her role as Peggy Carter, and we see a tag on it that says this is that she worked for the SSR, which another time we mentioned that. This is 1953. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but like I remember this being a surprise. Like when I went to see the thing, like I don't consciously remember knowing that she was going to be in the movie.
Yes. I mean, I can say confidently, I was also surprised. I don't know that I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
This didn't feel necessarily like an Easter egg sort of stunty thing, because we already knew at this point what Peggy Carter's role is and what generally the arc was of, I think, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter were contemporaneous enough that we already knew she was an active role in the MCU.
Yeah.
So it only made sense that we might see her crop up in a museum piece.
Yeah, no, I mean, it totally makes sense. I didn't think literally Haley, I didn't know that she was going to be in this movie at all.
Yeah.
And I remember being a big, like, that's really cool, because you sort of bring back all that, maybe you don't have the right dance partner, like all of a sudden all this stuff comes back, you're like, oh.
Well, yeah, and yeah, you're right. And we get, well, I mean, we see Haley in all kinds of situations.
Yeah. But you hear her talking, saying Steve, and then correcting herself and saying Captain Rogers. It was like,
So
just once again, just that little bit shows that even in 1953, she's like, man, she's still thinking about Steve, and waiting for that thing. If you go by Rogers the Musical, she's still waiting for that. She's still showing up, waiting for that dance, and take a long time before she gets it.
I just want to say right before this, there are 3 shots. He's standing in the crowd, and these are some of my favorite little gems of just filmmaking, allowing Steve to exist in a wide frame with a lot of activity going on around him. I mean, we talk about the Marvel camouflage. It's so much more grounding to see Chris Evans in the cap and coat with so much busyness in such a shallow kind of depth of field, where there's just a lot of activity in the foreground and the background, and it feels so natural and just lovely in a movie like this to take just seconds and let us experience what it feels like to be in the room.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
And to go even more esoteric of this, there's something about the way that Chris Evans carries himself that if you just took a frame of that, like him, like shushing the kid, and then a frame of like Ransom from Knives Out, you would know which was which.
Yeah.
There's something in the way that he carries himself as Cap that is totally physically different than other stuff. I mean, this is the job of an actor and stuff too, but there is something very particular about the way he stands and sort of carries himself as Cap that he doesn't really do in anything else. And in a way, I would say, having watched a lot of the Tony Stark, that's kind of what Robert Downey Jr. is. Like he's like, you watch, and then this is no slight, but you kind of watch like you watch Dr. Dolittle, and you watch and like, oh yeah, he's kind of doing the same. Like he just has the same sort of he's not a physical actor, but there's something about the way that Chris sort of controls himself as Cap that even like, because if we shooting forward to the when that the reveal of him and the staff comes out and a hand catches it and it's silhouette all in black, everyone knows who it is.
Yes. Yeah.
There's just something about that. So like, I don't know exactly how to articulate it, but like there's something else that he's doing besides just like I'm acting.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas Robert Downey Jr., after his, the troubles,
Sure.
It's as if someone came to him and said, "We'd like you to recast yourself as Tony Stark."
Yes.
Like, you're just going to be Tony Stark from this point forward. It's going to be a new day for you. And that's what we get. Everything we get is Tony Stark. There's no more.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's an opportunity for a part like Chaplin for Robert Downey Jr.
Right. Yeah, because he's so sort of defined by this thing. He was one of those guys that sort of transferred in the same way that like Will Smith is kind of always Will Smith and The Rock is kind of always The Rock. Even no matter what they do, they have that persona and they just do slight variations on it.
Yes.
Which not a slight. I mean, like, once again, multi-million-dollar, like, beloved around the world. This is not a thing. But it's just, there's multiple different kinds of acting, and like doing these shows is always fun for me because like that's a side I don't really get.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can't articulate it.
Well, and it's so easy to forget.
Trying.
It's so easy to forget that Chris Evans,
how hard he's working at this,
is a transcendent performance inside of a superhero shell, right?
Yeah.
That's the piece I think that's really worth celebrating it. And something I don't feel like I get to say about the Russo brothers that often.
Yeah.
He's directed well.
Yes. I think that's I'm gonna probably make that point 100 times over the course of this thing. I sort of watch this and go, God, I miss when they were this restrained, because when they were this restrained, like really trying to coming off of Community and really trying to prove themselves, man, like everything in this has this sort of like confidence and reasonable, even in a thing we're going to see, giant ships and people flying through the air and explosions and, people get punched in the face a lot. There is a real sort of tight control, I feel, in this, that if you watch the stuff like their post-Marvel stuff, you watch The Gray Man or whatever too, that is, they have lost all of that sense. They like you watch The Electric State and go, how are these the same directors? I don't get too far off it, but just to go back to like, maybe some people are better with guide rails. I would say the Wachowskis are the same way. Like there are to another duo that there are some directors who are better constrained than given carte blanche.
Yeah. Look at this box we're going to play in. We're going to just really be exuberant participants in a box rather than watch what happens when we blow up a box.
Right.
Yeah.
So we see a little bit of Haley Atwell, but I think we're going to see a little bit more of Haley Atwell as we continue on the minutes. But that's for the future.
That is for the future. And we end on that last lonely shot, which is another one of those shots where the beam of light from the projector is over his head, and you calling back to that scene, like so the first time we see him in the movie theater in First Avenger, once again watching all by himself. But this shot is beautiful because we have the mother and daughter sitting. He is isolated, right? He is alone, but the mother and daughter are sitting right next to a portrait of Captain America as Captain America, and it is such great composition. I just love the way it fills the frame. It's very, I really celebrate it. So who knows what comes next?
Trip down memory lane, like it's so nicely shot that you only get to see sort of little bits of it. You get the idea of it's this huge, like half of a floor of the museum of the Smithsonian is dedicated to this. In just a few simple shots. So hopefully
cool.
we'll get to see some more of that, and then we'll get to find out what Cap's decision is about this. Like, how does he feel about Project Insight? We'll find out as we continue on. If people want to hear more about the show or even helps us make it, Pete, where can they go?
It's very simple. If you've been listening to the Marvel Movie Minute, just type Marvel Movie Minute and add.com, and you'll go right to our home on the interweb, and you will find right there an opportunity where you can join our member community. You can get access to Discord. You can watch the live streams as we record. You can join us and ask questions. You get week early access to the episodes. You get your very own private member feed. So lots of benefits. Plus, you get to sleep soundly knowing that you are supporting this, what I have now come to think of as never-ending hosting gig of the Marvel Movie Minute.
So you feel like you're the Captain America of the Marvel Movie Minute, where it's like you want to get out, but they keep pulling you back in, and
maybe
you got to suit up again and sit down in front of the mic.
I don't know, man. Judging by the arc, I may be the Robert Downey Jr. of the Marvel Movie Minute.
You do get paid the most of all of us. So.
Please, please. This has been
you
great
got points
fun
on the back end.
Okay, fair.
So thank you all for coming along. We hopefully you continue on, and we will see you further on up the road. Enough said.
Bye. Rob?